All right, so we are here live for another edition of Car Tours. We're here with Elliot Alder. We're talking about his very interesting road trip with his new normal car for Elliot standards. Elliot, what do you got there?
So I have just picked up a beautiful new to me 1983 AMC Eagle. It's my new four-wheel drive daily driver station wagon, at least for the summer now, because apparently it's too clean to winter. But we'll get to that.
Terrific. Yeah, so just some background as people kind of filter in here to the chat. So basically, this is a half-hour broadcast. We're going to be talking to Elliot about his car and also about the road trip from where he brought this thing back from. And feel free to let us know in the comments if you want to ask him why, for example, the seats are upholstered with an old man's coat. It's stuff like that, where his headliner has gone. Go ahead and ask things off the cut. We're going to be having kind of an informal car tour. We do a lot of these. Actually, we've done some previous ones on classic cars. So if you have some classic car interest, go ahead and check those out. We're still waiting for some people to appear, I think. And so what exactly drew you to, oh, we got some people in the chat here. If you're just joining us, go ahead and comment if you would like. Throw in some comments and questions. We're here with Elliot with his new daily driver, 1983 AMC Eagle Wagon 4x4 in like the most brown possible. This car, I believe, is going for a world record in brown. Triple brown seats, double brown paint.
I like to think it's copper, but
is it copper? While we're waiting for people to filter in, why don't you give us just kind of a walk around of the car here?
yes. So how do I switch this around? Oh, apologies there.
You just try turning your phone just right around, just old school it.
I could do that, but I don't. Okay, here we go.
You're upside down, Brett. Oh, now you're good.
There we go. So
there she is.
This is the new beauty. It's a little bit underexposed there, but hopefully this compensates. So yes, this is my new to me 83 Eagle Wagon. It's currently sitting just over 261,000 kilometers. And for what it is absolutely astonishing. Sorry, I can't speak this morning. It's astonishingly clean.
So this is a really interesting car. What kind of led you to believe that the AMC Eagle Wagon was the most logical choice forward? Actually, we should back up a little bit. What was your previous regular car, and what happened to that one?
So my previous car was a 2004 Volvo Xc70. I got it not long after I finished university, and it was a 4x4 wagon. I was originally going to go for a Volvo 240, which is sort of a classic in my mind. But the all-wheel drive, having family farther up north, it just made a lot more sense. I got about 60K out of that thing, and then I had a minor electrical fire under the dash.
A minor fire? What's a minor fire?
It was just enough smoldering to pour smoke out of the vents, but not quite enough to actually have big scary flames. It has, however, totally cooked all the electronics. I've got really no interior controls left.
Would you describe the dashboard as nicely broiled?
Not even that. It all looks quite healthy, apart from an air quality sensor that looks a little smoldered. But it's more the computers, unfortunately, that have died on that. And that's sort of the fate that I expected that car to face ultimately. They're pretty solid cars. They last really well in the winters. They galvanize them, but the electrical gremlins on a 16-year-old car, catch up to you.
Obviously, if your 16-year-old car is giving you issues, you got to go way older. So how old is this car? Why don't you show us it again?
So this car is what, 37 years old now, I suppose?
I believe so.
And it has almost no electronics to speak of. It does actually have an electronically controlled carb. It also has a fantastic digital clock, which is currently reading 1280. So that's pretty exciting. I've thought about replacing the 7-digit displays, but I think it's more fun that way.
I think 1280 is. I mean, every car is going to give you a clock that shows normal time up to 60, but not every car has a clock that goes all the way to 80.
I think my favorite so far is 999, though. It has a really smooth ring to it.
We have a commenter here, Philip Curry, who would like to wonder if your previous car, had a nice smoky taste after the fire.
It's a nice burnt plasticky taste, yes. I've only been into it a few times while I was disassembling things to try and locate what went wrong. And yeah, it's lingered pretty intensely. So
So if we want to talk about the engine here in just a bit. You can leave the hood open, but just kind of pull back for a second.
yes.
What is the AMC Eagle for people who don't know? Give us AMC Eagle 101. What is it? Who makes it? What makes it cool?
So the AMC Eagle was in many ways one of the first, if not the first, modern crossover vehicle. It was a little dated looking in its time, but was very successful. Basically, AMC was having trouble in the leading into the early 80s, and they wanted to bring things back to life. And so what they did was they took their old Concorde, which was, you sort of picture a little Landau 2 or 4 seater, similar in style to this, and they jacked it up a couple inches, used a bunch of Jeep drivetrain components, and we have our 4-wheel drive station wagon.
So it's pretty cool to me in that it's one of the very first crossovers, but it's basically it honestly is kind of a half car, half Jeep equation.
It is, yes. It's the running gear. There are some original components on this, but it was.
All right, can you zoom in? What is that, an Eagle badge on the pillar? What is that?
Oh, yes. This
wow.
Is very, very, very shouty.
See, that's things you would not get from a modern car. We also have a question here about your clock. Nick Maronese wants to know, your clock is digital, but also says quartz. What's the truth? This is clearly a high-quality timepiece.
I must be honest, I haven't investigated that adequately yet. Given the quality of the rest of the interior, I'm gonna call that one out. But it looked fancy in the time, and I guess this is, well, as you can see from the actually surprisingly good wood grain veneer.
Yeah, actually.
It does actually put some effort into looking upmarket.
Now, actually, speaking of the interior, I got to point out, you have some tweed seats. What's going on there? You got to show me what's going on with the tweed.
I love these. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do about that one. It looks like there was a dog riding shotgun in it for many years, but they're fantastic looking. I just love these belts across here. These metal bezels get really, really hot in the sun, and I have burned myself already on them.
They're branding irons.
Yes, effectively, but without an actual AMC logo, which is a little disappointing. But yes, the seats themselves, they look like benches, but the rear here, rather like the front, is actually really just 2 very soft buckets that you can wedge a third person into the middle of.
Well, speaking of those back seats, viewer Phil Cray wants to know if this would be a good for a family road trip to Wally World. Is it good for the Griswold family vacation?
Absolutely. It's at once quite spacious and yet honestly rather limited. I'll show you the boot here. It feels like it should be a lot more spacious than it is. I had trouble getting 4 tires in here. But of course, if you're just going to Walmart, you're going to get all your stuff in there. The bench there does fold down. The seat back actually only goes as far as the front of this here. So you've still got a big empty space down there. It's not like, the Volvo. I was spoiled because I had totally flat right up to the driving seat back.
So let's kind of zoom out for a bit. The car is really cool, but I want to talk about this road trip. Where did you buy this car, and how far was to drive all the way back to where you live? By the way, you live in Ontario.
Yes. So I'm actually right now, I'm just about 30 kilometers from the old AMC plant in Brampton where this thing was built. I picked it up in Oliver, British Columbia, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours south of Kelowna. So far, all of my cars have somehow come from right around there. And it's basically what matters for this is it's a very arid region. You'd probably know the Okanagan as a popular wine growing destination. But yes, it's underneath, of course, that arid climate has meant that the car, hopefully this exposes well.
It looks really good under there. Definitely looks car-like.
Yes, and most importantly, it actually looks like there's car here.
Wow, the car is made of car.
Yes, many other Eagles are no longer made of car. They're made of air and really, really sad dreams.
So you
Uh,
bought this car sight unseen, right? Like you basically owned this car before you got to see it in person, and then you
yeah,
basically your only way back was this car. So what was the total
yes.
distance from where you bought it to where obviously where you live?
If I were a sensible person, it would have been 37-ish, 100
Mhm.
kilometers. But I'm an idiot, and I figured this is only my second time ever out in British Columbia, and I wanted to enjoy the roads. So I did about just over 7,000 kilometers in this thing before I made it
Wow.
home.
And so how did it do? So if you buy a cheap car on the internet, what kind of maintenance stuff did you do? Did you do any checks before you had it out, or did you pretty much just sign the paper, grab the keys, and go?
So I actually, the earliest flight into Kelowna landed there at about 2:30, so we weren't going to make it to down to Oliver and actually be able to check the car out in time
Uh-huh.
beforehand. So I had enough confidence from speaking to the guy and getting photos of things that the car was going to be up for the
It was
journey.
gonna work.
I had brought 40 pounds of tools and some clothes in my luggage, so I was reasonably confident that I could tackle most of what this relatively straightforward car could throw at me. And yeah, I signed the stuff over and got my temporary permit, which is still in the window here.
Yeah.
I got that right out of the airport and before I had seen the car in person.
In
Uh,
the consumer advice segment, we have a viewer, Kim, who is just dying to know how many lemons could fit in your trunk. Have you tested that yet?
oh, that's a very good question. That also sounds like a really expensive question. I could try it perhaps with, I guess I could try it with tennis balls. I'll see if I figure that out one day and I'll post on Instagram
Would
when
you
I
be
do.
confident in saying it can fit at least 6 lemons?
Oh, absolutely. This tool here, I would say that's about 2.5 lemons.
That's
So
true.
we're
It's the
definitely on
standard
a good
unit of
track.
measurement in the car world.
Yes.
So what advice would you have for someone who, let's say that they're based in Ontario and they see a car they really want to buy out in Alberta, British Columbia? What advice would you have for someone that wants to buy, a reasonably priced car very far away within Canada? Do you have any advice for people that are, contemplating a purchase like that as themselves?
The biggest thing for me has always been faith in the seller. With a vehicle like this, of course, after 40 years, there are doubtless many things that are likely to go wrong on it. And you need to know that this is a person who has cared for it, who's been responsible with it, who's done things when they've needed doing, but also ideally someone who has the technical sense to be able to speak relatively authoritatively
Mhm.
on it. I've been fortunate. Both of the cars that I've driven home were owned by mechanics, and so they've been able to tell me what they've done in their time. In this case, there were certain things that the fellow had other people do since then, just due to life considerations for him. But we were able to go through a big enough checklist, and to go through enough photos is the other really
Yeah.
important thing. We probably had 5 or 6 rounds of photos back and forth, all angles. You do worry about being burdensome. Coming back. Oh, can you actually get a closer one in the fender well, or showing me the strut towers, or around the various seals? Is there are there any drips on the ground under the transfer case, stuff like that? But that's the stuff that really builds your confidence. And in the case of this car, I knew what I was getting in for. Was likely going to be. There's still a bit of mess that I haven't cleaned up here.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing on this was that the valve cover gasket was horrendously leaky. I went through, I think, close to 12 liters of oil on the way back, not because I
That's
was
all
burning, but
outdoor.
just because it was, yes, all gushing out. So if you noticed underneath the car where lots of things looked rather glossy,
Yeah.
that's because it made its way all the way down
The
and then
natural
proceeded.
oil coating.
Yes, so I've got some good early rust proofing before it gets to crown. So that's quite reassuring. When I took it in for inspection, they weren't so keen on it, and I do need to do a bit of cleanup before I go back. But again, we will get to that.
Yes. Now, zooming out just a little bit, you're a talented photographer. I believe you've contributed some photography for various automotive publications. including one that you did actually for driving with it when you worked with Chris Hadfield. You want to talk a little bit about that experience?
I mean, that experience really comes down to Nick Marinese, and I was just fortunate enough to be entrusted with that one. But Nick had secured a story with Mr. Hadfield and his beautiful Thunderbird. Yes, I never remember my Fords.
Yeah.
This is my first American car, actually. So yes, we did this. We went down to Sarnia, and we did a bunch of photos in the Shell refinery down in Sarnia. Figured, we don't have any spaceports here, but perhaps all of the infrastructure there.
Pipes.
Pardon?
All the aluminum pipes would look relatively spacey.
Yes. And so we had a beautiful spick and span car against this grimy industrial backdrop, and it was fantastic. Nick spent quite a bit of time with Chris. They shared their passion for aviation. Nick is also a pilot, so
very cool.
But yes.
So returning to Earth, Phil Curry wants to know, is that the stock suspension height? And maybe you want to explain to some people that the high height of this car and kind of part of what makes it unique.
Yes, so this is actually stock. If anything, it's currently sitting a little bit low. Front spring is a little bit tired. It's sitting like a half-inch low. But the rear springs are leaves. It's front coil independent and just a solid rear axle with leaf spring.
This is how they came.
Pardon?
But this is how they came.
Yes. In this case, the rear leaf is sitting a little straighter than it should. I'm likely going to add a leaf into it to pop the rear end back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this thing, it's certainly not meant to go off-road in the same way that your Jeep would, but it's certainly something where if you've got a cabin in the woods, this is the car to get you there.
That's so cool. So would you say you have a favorite feature about this car? Like, would you say your favorite thing is how it drives, how it looks, or is it the 1280 clock? What would you say your favorite feature of the car is?
I think that's a tough one. It definitely has an overall charm to it. I think one of the most interesting things on it, early cars were full-time all-wheel drive. They eventually switched to this, which is super cool. It's a selectable four-wheel drive, and you just pull this pin down and switch this, and it's vacuum operated, so it gives a nice little hiss when you do it. Vacuum operation also means that it can be prone to issues nowadays, but I've remedied that. And yeah, you can have totally civilized rear-wheel drive usage. I was getting as good as 8.5 per 100 kilometers on the highways back, which I was thinking maybe I'd get 15 liters per 100, but
that's actually a question that Christina Legowski had, was how is it on gas? And I guess you have some pretty good experience with road trip mileage. Did it burn more gas or oil?
So it really didn't burn much oil, insofar as I can tell. I mean, the exhaust comes out nice and clear. It's more just the leakage there. In terms of fuel, I lost track of my tally, actually, but yes, this actually gets better economy than my XC70 did.
Wow, pretty good, actually.
Pretty fantastic. So I wasn't paying attention to my economy when I was doing some of the more spirited stuff in BC. I can't imagine it was fantastic there, but it's also got
relatively fast.
Yes.
Is it a fast car?
No. It does, however, handle far better than I believe it has any right to. Part of that is perhaps owed to the fact that it's currently sitting on winters, and with them being 6 years old, I figured they're no good here in Ontario, so I may as well just burn them, bringing it home.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, so they were good and sticky. It's definitely not like driving my 944, but by and large, you point the nose in. The power steering is quite direct. It's got a bit of weight to it, but it's still pretty effortless. And it just goes, and then you wait for the lethargic 3-speed to eventually catch up to you.
It is a 3-speed automatic.
Yes, it's a 3-speed torque flight, which has been way better than I actually anticipated. Third gear does go to a 1-to-1 ratio, and it does have a torque lock through it. So you've got sort of your peak economy or efficiency rather through that once that engages.
So sorry to interrupt. What would you say the future holds for this car? Are there any modifications planned for it? Are there some things that you're dying to fix on it? What does the future look like for this really cool car?
So I am a bit of an annoying purist for the most part. I went to school for history, and so I like that this is sort of a time capsule. And so I think the first thing on the list is I've currently got the face off of the radio there because it had a modern
Yeah,
Panasonic head unit and it just looked wrong to me.
yeah, it doesn't
So
match the vibe.
no, so I need to remedy that. I would like to figure out a solution to this seat situation. It's not looked promising for original fabrics so far, but we'll see what we can do. A friend of mine is very eager to see this thing buffed because he played with
Yeah,
a few spots. I don't know if you can see it as well on
yeah, I can
camera
see that.
here, but the paint is actually really, really good on this
It
thing.
would be a
And
polished turd.
sorry?
It would be a polished turd.
I like to think it's more than a turd. I mean, it's definitely a dated 70s design, but I also know that you like the 70s, so I
I
don't know
do
that
like.
you're an
I'm a
authority
big
on
fan of
taste.
this car, actually.
Oh, now this is another thing. I was initially very, very iffy on these wheels. I've never really been a fan of sort of the American racing style.
Yeah, but
Uh,
they do say
but
Eagle on them.
yes, they're Eagle alloys, and as my friend Justin found here, they actually will polish up really nicely.
Yeah, they would.
And I think they actually work on this car, which is, it pains me to admit it, but yeah, they look good on it. So
You or Jonathan Yarconi would love to see the interior again. I can't get enough of that. Is it tweed? It's not houndstooth.
it is a fine tweed, or
It's a very
it's
fine
considered
tweed.
a tweed. Yes, but
Look at the belt buckles in it.
yes, the branding irons. These
Those
belts
are
are
so cool.
fantastic. I really enjoy how the headrest just collapse right down into the seat.
Yeah.
Uh, Perfect height for my little sister, actually, who came out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a fun little thing. It's a little time capsule. I'm very excited about these. Pardon the filth. I still haven't actually cleaned the road trip
Road
prime
trip.
off of this, but oh, I don't know how well you can see it here. I do have original AMC floor mats, so I'm gonna replace this pile on them. I'm thinking I'll recarpet the whole thing because, as it turns out, you can get whole carpet sets for like $250.
See, this is the
Which,
thing with American cars. You can't beat the parts availability.
well, and that's the thing. I've always put my nose up at them, and I hate Imperial fasteners. I think they're stupid, and metric is the only system that's acceptable. But it's to do all of the brakes on this car would cost me less than one caliper on the Volvo.
That's true. That's
And
true.
I really can't argue with that. I will say, actually, the Lada does have better parts availability.
We should actually go back to that, actually, because I think you had also mentioned that I believe 2 other of your cars came from British Columbia as well. Why don't you give us a little bit of backstory on that?
Yes, so my super practical first car, I got a cheap Porsche 944, and that came from Kelowna. And like with this, my little sister flew out with me, and we journeyed that home back across the country. We actually did similar, we were just shy of 7,000 kilometers. And then my next sensible purchase was a 97 Lada Niva, which is the cute little 4x4. I love that thing to death. And
Great car.
that, pardon?
I said the Lada is such a great car.
Oh, it is. So far, I think I've had about 30 different people behind the wheel of it, and it just brings so much joy, and that's the biggest thing with it too. And so that came, I guess, just about an hour south of where this thing did, and as it is all over here, is 2 hours south of where kind of the Porsche came from. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't journey the Lada back. It would not have made it.
No,
But I have had great success and great stories. And I should actually mention as well. So I wasn't alone this time around. So the fellow that was selling this to me, unfortunately he suffered a stroke about a year ago. And what that's meant for him is that he needs a mobility scooter for when he's out at car meets for longer periods. So what he's done now, as a true hero, he's got himself a Dodge Rampage, and he's got ramps up into the back of it. Pardon?
That's obviously the next move.
Yes. So what he did is he listed this and his other car. He wanted one with air conditioning. He got it was an '89 Lincoln Continental Mark 7 luxury sports.
Wow, the LSC.
Yes, has the 5-liter high output V8. It leaves this thing in the dust.
Yeah.
It's got a fantastic burble, a ridiculous leather interior in it, and it's got pneumatic suspension, pneumatic seat bolsters. It's got a dozen buttons across the center console. The thing is,
it's the future from 1989.
It is indeed, and it does have a clock that works. I should concede.
I mean, yours works too. It just doesn't tell the right time.
It does once you figure out what the false readings are.
What time is it now? Can you show us again?
Let's see.
Let's see what time we've got.
Right now, it is. I don't know what that one is.
Oh, it's actually correct. 12:21.
I think that might be a backwards G.
It's upside down G. You never know. This clock is open for interpretation.
Yes.
So
very postmodern.
On that big road trip back home, was there a favorite road or a favorite place you drove through?
That's a really tough call. Oh man, all of BC was so fantastic. We went as far north as 100 Mile House, a couple hours north of Whistler, and as far south as really just, I think we were about 20 kilometers shy of the border. Pardon? Oh, wow. You there?
Sorry, wasn't that west of Kelowna? So you went backwards the other way?
Yes, we went from Kelowna to Vancouver, up to Whistler, then up to 100 Mile House, back down near Kelowna. We twisted around back and forth. Dave, our mutual friend who organizes rallies with Classic Car Adventures, he set me up with a fantastic itinerary, just a whole bunch of back roads. I think probably one of the favorites, come to think of it now, was a twisty little route that connected a whole bunch of cattle ranches in southern BC. And it was a gravel road. The photo actually that was used on the thumbnail for this video was taken on that road. And one of my favorite things is just the fact that a lot of those roads are just, there are fences on either side of the entrance and exit, and then cattle grates, which, if you're unfamiliar, basically you dig a pit, you run a bunch of steel tubes across it so the cows don't want to step on them, and then trucks can still pass through, but your cows stay within their pasture. So this was a 20-kilometer route with the occasional cow on the road, stuff like that. That's really charming, beautiful lake off to the side, just absolute serenity.
So I guess another big question for this car is, this thing is obviously so nice. Do you have the heart to drive this thing through an Ontario winter?
So this is a very woe is me kind of situation, because no, I've messed up and I've gone and bought a car that's too clean to use as I intended. I was originally gonna pick up a pair of hoopties that were up near Ottawa. Our friend Mark Charlton looked at those for me, but then someone offered the guy double what I was, and so hopefully they have a good life there. But yes, on those, the sills were completely rotten. I was going to have to weld in new structures in there and a bunch of other stuff. This, for $1,000 more, I got way more car ready to go, clearly. And definitely the more sensible buy. It's just that now I've got to find another stupid car to drive.
So the hunt begins again.
Yes, I'm actually looking forward to hearing back on a prospective car today. But we'll keep you tuned on that one because it would be absolutely stupid.
All right, we're almost wrapped up. We actually have a question from Marcella, who wants to know, does this car have air conditioning and heat on that big road trip? What was your climate control situation like?
It does not have AC. It does have an excellent heater. Currently, the little baffle that switches it from interior and exterior air, I don't think you're going to be able to see this.
I think we can, actually. Wow.
Okay, so you'll see this thing is just flopping around in here because there's a bushing that's missing. So I'm gonna have to design and print a replacement for that so it actually sits where it's supposed to. So we had a bit of heat coming through the vents, but this really primitive climate control here, you just, on either side of the column here, this is the passenger side, that's the driver's side, and it just pours out through here.
Wow.
And when you're at idle, you have basically no airflow, but then once you get moving, these vents actually scoop up a fair bit, and it's really, really quite pleasant.
That's really cool.
Another fun thing in here, I don't know if maybe you can see there, that little brass tube. That's the washer. I
barely see it, yeah.
Okay. So that's the washer jet. It really just shoots just a straight jet. It splashes on the windscreen. It scared the crap out of me the first time. But old car charm, and that's what we're really here for. There's one other thing that I enjoy, just, this AMC Jeep heritage. I enjoy that they didn't bother to create new stickers, so I've got my little Jeep CJ.
Sorry, can you zoom us in closer on the Jeep sticker?
Pardon?
Can you zoom us in closer on the Jeep sticker? Look at that.
Yes. So we've got a bunch of little quirks like that. American Motors was not strapped for cash, and that was part of why they ended up selling out to Chrysler in, was that 1987? And that was really the death of the brand straight away. But
well, Elliot, thanks for taking the time. We're actually right up on half an hour. It's been great. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us about your car. It's been really great seeing this thing. It looked like a pretty incredible road trip across Canada to get this thing home. I'm glad it's in a nice, happy home.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. The car has been excellent to me. We've named it Barry now, and I think Barry's got a new home. So I don't have any plans on letting him go for the time being. So I look forward to the adventures ahead.
Well, thanks for taking the time, Elliot. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Clayton. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for commenting. We're going to be doing more car tours. We're going to be doing these pretty much every Thursday of about noon. We have lots in the works, so stay tuned, and we'll be seeing you on another broadcast.
Take care.